going to jump straight to it. Can I just tell you, you got something to look forward to at the end. We'll give you time to figure that out. Youth and guys, you can go. That's awesome. Oh man. So this week is our Christmas announcements coming up. So if at the end of the sermon you get your diaries ready, because it's going to be all the stuff that's going on here at the church. So it's going to be an important one, as ridiculous as it is. How is everyone doing? Is everyone okay? Yes. Good to see you. It's great to see so many smiling faces. If you don't know who I am, my name's Sam. I'm the pastor of the church here. It's an absolute thrill to get to finish off our series on the greatest sermon ever. We've been looking at the Sermon of Jesus on the Mount of Olives. We've been going through it section by section, and now here we are at the end. Matthew 7, if you're in your Bible. It's Matthew 7, which you should be because it's church. Matthew 7, starting from verse 24. So we've been going through the last ones. We started all the way back, all those weeks ago in Matthew 5. We were looking at the Beatitudes, how we live our lives. Blessed are those. Then we looked at being salt and light. Salt and light. Hopefully, as I say these words, it's starting just to flicker some memories in your mind about things that were said. Motives over actions. We've looked at the gift of covenant. We've looked at counter-cultural living. We've looked at humility. We've looked at true possessions. We've looked at judgmental attitudes. We've looked at persistent prayer. We've looked at the golden rule. We've looked at being fruitful disciples. And now we come to the conclusion. Jesus is here. He's on a hillside. He sits and people listen as he's been teaching to multitudes of people. And here he brings his sermon to a close. And it's important because back in the day it was how we finish. Often when I want to talk to someone, I say what's most important first. I need to get it off my chest. Oh, Anthony, I forgot to say this. Oh, by the way, how are you? How's life? And I get the most important thing off first. But often back in the teaching of the day, in the Jewish teaching of the day, often what would be most important would be left to last. Often, especially in the literary. So often when Paul wrote what was at the end of the letter was most important. Why? Because it would be the last thing you were told, and it would be the thing you would be remembered. So we have to take this of great certainty and of great importance as Jesus says it. If I'm in a springy, bouncy mood today, you might be able to tell Lloyd's laughing. He was laughing at me, that's okay, I don't judge him for it. I scored my first goal for my football team yesterday, so I'm absolutely thrilled. Thank you. Wow, might be the only applause I get all day, so I'll take it. I'm really excited. So Jesus comes to the end of his sermon, and now he says this, and actually, if we look at it, really what was said in Simon's sermon last week and the second half of Nori's the week before is actually one large conclusion as Jesus brings to a close his entire sermon. And if I could give it a title, it would be one word, 3 letters, and it would be this: act. Act. If you write that down, type the words act, or write down the words act. Why? Because Jesus is saying, you've heard me. You've been listening to me. I've been talking on this hillside for minutes, potentially hours. I don't know how long Jesus went on for. I'm sure even if he went on for a long time, he'd be fantastic. He wouldn't have Pat complaining about the length of the sermon, would he? Would he, Pat? Unlike me. You know what I'm saying. So even how long he's going to, he's saying, this is the end. This is what I need you to go away and do, is act. Act on what I say. And so today, my extension to you is, Cunham Valley Church, are we going to act? Are we going to act on what we've heard? Because potentially, even as I've been saying all those things about what we've been learning about, some of you will be going, oh yeah, that. Oh yeah, possessions. Oh yeah, forgot about that. Oh yeah, humility. Yeah, okay, I haven't been doing that, that's okay, maybe something else. Salt and light, maybe not. But actually Jesus, and what I'd like to extend to you is today is, it's time now to act. To actually bring this to a close and put this into action. So let's read it together. Matthew 7, starting at verse 24. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. You may have heard the story before. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew. He huffed and he puffed, and he blew the house down. Yet it did not fall, because it was built on hard foundation. It was built on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. It fell with a great crash. So as I've said, although this is a separate sermon, we need to look at what was spoken at by Simon and what was spoken by Nori, because it is Jesus' whole conclusion. And what Jesus is saying is, you have to look at how you act to see if you're following me. Are you a disciple? Are you a disciple? That's what Jesus is saying. And he started it with Noreen's second section, where he spoke about, are you saved or are you lost? Which path are you walking on? Are you walking on the broad path, which leads ultimately to hell? Or are you walking on the narrow path that leads to eternity with me? Which path are you walking on? And then he goes on to the next section, which was the first part of Simon's, and he says, are you a true prophet? Are you a true believer? Is what you say true, or are you deceiving others? Is the words you say deceiving other people? Are you a true prophet or a false prophet? And then he goes on, he says, are you a true or false disciple? Are you deceiving yourself? Are you saved or are you lost? Are you a true prophet or you're a false prophet? Are you a true disciple or you're a false disciple? And then he ends with this, are you going to listen to me? Are you going to put things into action? Or are you just going to be someone that builds their house on sand? Because you can have all the information. We are living in the information age. And how many of us know everything and get everything right? Yeah. It's Neil at the back there. Fantastic. There's one. Thanks, Neil. I need it back. No one other than Neil. No one. Why? Because so often we have information up here, but we so rarely put it into action. Or when things happen, it becomes a lot harder to put them into action, right? I tend to be quite a nice husband when everything's going swimmingly. And sometimes then when we disagree, maybe I'm not such a good person. Because all of a sudden, it becomes more difficult. The waves are crashing, the streams are rising, and actually, what have I built my house on? There's a question. Because it's easy when the sun's up. Do you remember that, Wales? Do you remember the sun? Oh, there's fine. But it's easy when the sun's out, it's easy when things are fine, it's easy when the bank balance is full, it's easy when you're not having any disagreements, it's easy when things are simple, but when you get that diagnosis about illness, or when you get that friend who says, you know what, I just don't want to be friends anymore, or when that bank balance goes into the red, then you need to ask yourself, where are my foundations? Because I can know all the stuff, I can have all the knowledge, I went to Bible college for 3 years, I know a decent amount of stuff in here, but it doesn't always come out here. And I guarantee you, if you'll let me say this, it doesn't always come out of you in your life either. And that's okay. I'm not judging you. I'm not bringing condemnation. But if we need to look like Jesus, Jesus said, where are you walking? Which side are you walking on? Are you true or are you false? Because what reveals it, it's our actions. It's how we live our lives. So he says this. He says, you've heard me. Now check yourself and put it into action. Check yourself and put it into action. So, contextually, why is Jesus saying this? Well, he was living in a time where the teachers of the law said one thing and did another. The Pharisees were known for their highly religious outsets, their highly religious mindsets, and would say, you've got to do this, you've got to do that, you can't do that, don't eat that, don't do this at this time of day, don't do this on this day, don't do all these sorts of things, but were so often found maybe in public to be doing what seemed right, but often their heart motives were wrong, and potentially in private were very not living out what they should do. And they thought they had their salvation based in this outward appearance. And so Jesus is actually contextually saying that those teachers, you don't want to listen to them. And when people speak into your life and their life doesn't match what they're saying, can I suggest sometimes you need to go, maybe I'm not going to listen so much to you. Whether it's a news outlet, or a magazine, or someone in the work office, or a family member, as much as we love these people, and we should love them, sometimes we have to be willing to go, I just don't think you're speaking wisdom because I don't see it in your life and I don't see it bringing any fruit. And that's wisdom, and that takes maturity, but we need to get there. Otherwise, we'll just be taking wisdom and, what is perceived wisdom from anyone. And taking it in, and it will ultimately, it will affect our lives. So he's saying, don't focus on the pious religious leaders who said, say one thing and do another. But he says, actually, I'm coming to say, what you say and what you know and what you declare, do it. Do it. Because it's how you are known. Months ago I spoke about we are what we repeatedly do. You might remember that phrase, we are what we repeatedly do. So you aren't generous because you are generous once. You are known as generous because you are repeatedly generous, right? So you are what you repeatedly do. You are stingy because you are repeatedly stingy. You are angry because you are repeatedly angry. That's how you become known. And so we have to look, and Jesus is saying, you are what you do, effectively. And so he's saying, well, would you look at me as an example, but then would you go away and look at you? And so that's what God's been challenging me on this week, is going, do you really look like me? Because you know the stuff. You've been studying this sermon, you've heard my words, you've read the red words of the Bible, but are you living it? Are you acting it? Is it coming out of you? Because I scored a goal yesterday, but I also had to go at a ref, not very nicely, and got told off by the other pastor on the team. I'm being honest. Something happened, I'm on the pitch, where are you going? And there's another pastor going, whoa, get back on the sideline. What do you think you're doing? Because it doesn't always come out of me. And I'm not unashamed to say that because I'm a human. But we have to check ourselves. And do you know what? I was driving home that day and I was trying to justify it. Honestly. And I found myself getting angry at him for telling me off. And I had to really check myself. And I had to go, yeah, but the ref made a bad call. Yeah, but I was protecting my teammates. And, yeah. And God just said, you were just wrong, mate. You were just wrong. That's okay. But I don't want to live a life, I don't want to be known. And lots of the boys that are Christians, but some of them aren't. And what if they see me, someone who declares something, but doesn't always live it out? That broke me. Because I want to be living Jesus, and I want to be showing them Jesus, but am I always? I don't know, just a challenge for you, just to encourage you. It happens to us all, but we need to be willing to look at our own hearts and go, maybe I need to change something, maybe something needs to shift. In fact, in the Freedom in Christ book, it says this. I loved it this week in my table. I was emphasizing this because I loved it. It says, when we see God for who He is, we don't become aware of the sin of others, but of our own sin. But when we are lukewarm in our relationship with God, we tend to overlook our sin and see the sin of others and want to point it out to them. I'm going to say that again because that is huge and a great temperature gauge for where you are with Jesus. When we see God for who He is in His fullness, we don't become aware of the sin of others, but of our own sin. But when we are lukewarm in our relationship with God, we tend to overlook our own sin and see the sin of others and want to point it out to them. And all of a sudden we have a temperature gauge and go, well, where am I with Jesus? Am I a little bit lukewarm in the sense that I'm trying to justify my own sin and point someone else out? Maybe. So this final teaching, the one Jesus wants to stick out in our minds, is live out what I have taught you. Now you have heard, go and do. Seems simple, but Jesus is being really clear. He's concluding it over these last 3 sermons. Go and do. Pick your side. Pick your side. Narrow path, broad path. False prophet, true prophet. False disciple, true disciple. Wise builder, someone who listens, someone who puts into practice, or someone who just hears but goes away on a Sunday and gossips all over again. Someone who goes away on a Sunday and says, oh, well, worship wasn't good, was it? Didn't get anything out of that. Someone who goes away on a Sunday and texts that angry text to someone rather than sorting an issue out. We've got to be people that live this out. And you might say to me, well, Sam, I thought it was all about a relationship. Simon was talking last week about
a relationship. Isn't it just about relationship? It's not about that sort of stuff. It's not about our actions. It's actually about, do we know God and are we known by Him? And I'd like to challenge this, and I think I've said this before, but a true relationship, a genuine connection with someone brings change. Doesn't it? I always use my wife as an example here, so I'm not going to. Someone else. Your respect for a police officer will change the way you drive when there's a police car coming past. The way you think of someone in authority will change the way you speak about them, in front of them and behind their back. Why? Because a true relationship with that person, it doesn't have to be, police officer is just a member of authority, but we all have a relationship with that person. Why? Because we know they can book us and ticket us and pull us over. And so it actually depends on that, and it brings change into my actions. And so if you say, well, I know Jesus, I just don't do any of that other stuff. Do you know Jesus? Do you really know him? You might know about him. You might have experienced him in a prayer session once or twice. But do you know him? His character, his heart? Question. I'm not here to bring doubt into it. I'm not here to drop a religious grenade and walk out like that's not my plan. But at least let's go, man, is my life imaging something about this? Because I'm fed up of seeing Christians in the media who don't live out what they say. I'm fed up of seeing Christians in politics and Christians in sport and Christians in anywhere else. And I'm fed up of hearing, let's be brutal, I'm fed up of hearing people from Fernhill saying, oh, that's not funny, those people from church won't live Christian lives. Because how are we going to impact anything? When we start impacting, come back and they go, I've heard about that church. They're horrible. Well, they gossip. They're angry. They don't sort out issues. I don't know what I can do there. Why? Because we have to live out who we are. We have to live out who we represent. If God is not coming out of us, is He truly in us? If God is not coming out of us, is He truly in us? And how do you get God in? Well, you invite Him in. Most of us have done that in this room. And then do you know what? You keep in contact. You spend time in prayer. You spend time in worship. You spend time honouring Him. You spend time confessing sin. Saying, Jesus, would you clear me up? Clean me out? Let's go again. Make me pure as snow. You stand on the promises of God that He tells you that He's faithful. We were singing so many of them today. That He's a way maker, a promise keeper. That He heals. That He is faithful. That He will provide. That He is loving. And so all of a sudden that starts to come out. And then all of a sudden we're faithful. And we're generous. And we're kind. And we point people to Jesus. If He's not coming out of you, is He truly in you? So relationship, true relationship, brings change. It brings a change of personality. It brings a change of action. And guys, this can feel heavy. But isn't it just like super exciting? Isn't that exciting? That you could know someone who came, took away your sin, took away your shame, gave you freedom, poured out His own Holy Spirit into your life, and then said, if this person's alive in you, He's going to change you. And He's not going to change you to be horrible, He's going to change you into an awesome person. Because you're going to love people, and you're not going to judge people, and you're going to try and share with people, and you're going to try and be faithful with people, and you're going to honour people, and sometimes you're going to have to be firm with people, but you're going to love them. And people are going to look at you and they're going to go, man, something changed about you. That's just beautiful what you're becoming. And you're not all there. You still got some ugly bits. You still got some bits I see that I'm not happy with, but you're changing. Sometimes we have to see the beauty in change. Sometimes we have to see the beauty in challenge. The Bible tells us God challenges those He loves. A good father challenges those He loves. Why? Because He said, I know correction is good for you. So see this as an opportunity to go, wow, new day. More correction, Jesus. Yeah. I receive your love, but give me your guidance as well. Give me your direction, not me in the course I need to be on. Why? Because I need you and I need to reflect you to those around us. And can I pull out a common theme from this entire practice, which is important here? When you check yourself, you need humility. Because without humility, you get me in a car thinking another pastor is wrong because he challenged me. That's ego. That's pride. Humility says, yeah. Okay. I'm missed the mark there. I'm sorry. God, would you forgive me? I love you. I want to serve you. I want to walk in your ways. But we need humility to look in that mirror of life and go, yeah, actually, I don't necessarily like bits that are looking back at me. We need humility. Jesus has spoken about it all the way through. Motives over actions. What is your heart? Where's your heart? So guys, as we check ourselves, please don't go in there all egotistical. Oh, I can't wait to see what I see. Let's have a look at myself. You can do that on the outside, that's all right. You know, get dressed up nice hair, nice haircut. You can like the way you look, but sometimes we've got to be able to go, yeah, I'm willing for Jesus to point out some of those dirty spots there that I wasn't willing to see before. So the New Bible Commentary, which is a commentary, is a books that go into depth into each verse of a Bible passage, and they're great if you want to do a bit more study. I recommend you get one. It says this on this passage: this whole concluding section of the discourse, this section, leaves us with the uncomfortable demand to consider not just what we profess, but whether it is based on a genuine relationship with Jesus and issues or changes the life of a true disciple. I'm going to read that again. This whole concluding section, the last few sermons of this discourse, leaves us with the uncomfortable demand to consider not just what we profess, not just what we say, not just what comes out of our mouth, but whether it is based on a genuine relationship with Jesus and issues in the life of a true disciple, or comes out in the life of a true disciple. So, Jesus boldly asked his followers, what's coming out, and what are you doing about it? Are you going to act on what you've heard? And so today I'm going to say, guys, what's inside you, and what are you going to do about these last 13 weeks? We don't do sermon series just to fill time, fill weeks. We do them because we believe God wants to say something to us and change us into the church he wants. Change us into the people individually, but corporately the church he wants to see in this place, in this location, for this moment. Because can I say, which is really cool, you're here for this moment for a reason. You're not here just to sit in a chair. You're not here to just sit and go, oh, yeah, Sam will do that stuff. Or Simon can do that. Oh, Wash can go visit people. No, you're here right now to hear this message, to put it into practice, and actually be a part of this church, be a part of this body. Why? Because God wants to use you. Why? Because God gave you gifts. And he specifically didn't give me your gifts so you could be part of this church to use what you've got. It'd be boring if I had all the gifts. But he says, you're each part of it. So where are you going to walk? To conclude, this is what Jesus is saying in his whole message. Which side are you going to walk on? Are you going to walk on the broad path, or are you going to walk on the narrow path? What sort of prophet, what sort of speaker of my word are you going to be? Are you going to be a true prophet? Are you going to speak my words in love and grace? You're going to be a false prophet. You're going to deceive others with your words. What sort of disciple are you going to be? Are you going to be a true disciple? You're going to be one that stands firm and has a fruitful life? Or are you going to be a false disciple? You're going to deceive yourself. You're going to look in that mirror and go, oh, I look good. Yeah, nothing wrong with me. And are you going to be, what sort of builder are you going to be? Are you going to hear everything that Jesus said? Are you going to build your house on the rock, on a firm foundation? Are you going to build just life on the sand? Because I promise you this. It is the life, the self-centered, judgmental, greedy life built on sand that when the waves come, crashes to the ground. We've seen it enough. We've seen it in celebrity life, we've seen it in tabloids and gossip columns, we've seen it everywhere that when you live for yourself, when you put your strength in what you can do, when the waves come crashing down, when life hits, when chaos roams all around, it is the sandy life of self-centeredness, ego, jealousy, greed, rudeness, judgment that comes crashing down into brokenness. But it's the life of humility, grace, love, mercy, forgiveness, self-emptying, that stands firm on the rock of Jesus. That's what it does. And notice that he's not saying just build my life, I'm the rock, and just build my life on me as a person. He's saying building your life on the rock is putting into practice what I've said. It's not just going, I believe in Jesus, I'm on the rock. Yay. No, it's actually putting that stuff into practice. Because you can believe in the rock, you can believe the rock's there, but you can be on the sand. And that's even madder. Isn't that mad? Knowing there's safety, knowing there's a firm foundation, and you're here building your house on the sand. That must be fantastic over there. Jesus is great. But I'm going to be self-centered and egotistical and horrible and rude and ungracious and unmerciful. Oh, my house has fallen down. How did that happen? It's stupid, isn't it? Because we know, just because we know, and Jesus is saying, you can know about me, but are you going to build your life on me? Are you going to build your life around what I've said? Why? Because I promise you, when those waves come, and they will come, you will get a diagnosis of illness at some point in your family or your life. Some of you might be walking through it right now. You might go into debt, you might have financial issues, you might have relational issues, your kids might be a difficult pain. Please, Jesus, no. You might just have the worst life that you can imagine, and yet when you stand on the rock, your house ain't going anywhere. Please, church, let's not be people that know about the rock. Let's not be people that know about the firm foundation of Jesus and build our house on the sand. Because it doesn't matter what you know, it's what you build your house on, it's what you build your life on, it's what your foundations are on. It's what your foundations are on that matters and will change how your life goes and how you live. And let me just say this to solidify my point about living it out. The last verses, they didn't have to be added in. Last verses of chapter 7. It's not Jesus speaking now, it's a person writing. It says this: when Jesus had finished saying these things, the crowds were amazed at his teaching. What I'd pay for someone to write that down. Because he taught as one who had authority and not as their teacher of the law. Why did Jesus have authority? Because for once, the people saw someone who was willing to live out what he spoke. For hours he'd stood on that hillside and he'd spoken, and they went, that's funny, because I see that in his life. It wasn't because he had a fantastic speaking voice, and I assume Jesus did, because he was Jesus. It wasn't because he had a wonderful movement and speaking techniques and a wonderful voice. It's because he acted what he said. That people went, I can follow that. I can believe in that. That man has authority over me, unlike the religious leaders. Because they have the fancy words, they have the big scrolls, and they have all the things they need, and yet they don't live out what they say. So I'm going to follow this guy Jesus. I'm going to follow this guy Jesus, and I'm going to build my house on the rock. I'm going to build my house on the rock. So ladies and gentlemen, to put that into 21st century, your impact and your authority in front of your friends and your colleagues and your church members and those you meet and your neighbours and those people on your street and those people that don't like you and your friends on social media, your authority for them depends on how you live your life and what you declare. Not how cool you are, not how many friends you've got, not on the position you hold or the title you have. It's on whether you can live out what you say. That's where our authority comes from. And it comes from Jesus. Because when we preach Jesus and we live it, he brings an unbelievable authority. Unbelievable. So, that's been done. That's not that time. We're going to take some time now, because actually we should not be walking away from this going, cool, thanks Sam. Great. Tea and coffee? That isn't what our response should be sermon be. We should be saying, Jesus, I'm going to drop my pride. I'm going to take up my humility. I'm going to look in that mirror. I'm going to see if what's coming out of me is Jesus. And potentially I might have to ask the question, how much Jesus is inside me? Have I really been spending time with him and taking everything of him in so that I can give him up? Am I willing to act? going to act? You could jump on the piano. All right. Awesome. So I'm going to ask you, and now we're going to open up the front. We're not going to do a stand thing. Guys, this is a declaration that, you know what? I'm walking with Jesus. I want to live what I say. I want to be a faithful follower. So I'm going to open up the front. And if any of these apply to you, I want you just to come and stand and we're going to pray for you.